Not alone in studio, of course, I have my panelists this morning. Allow me to introduce Gloria Oroba, right next to me, nominated senator. Karibu sana, good morning and congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
And we also do have Achieng Osogo, governance and political analyst. Karibu sana, Achieng, after a very long time, a bruising election that was. And Asaska Lebarakwe, of course, public policy expert. Thank you, ladies, for joining us. We will be also joined by Vivian Ta, a political and governance analyst, in just a moment as well. But let's take a look at this is what we have on the very front page of the Daily Nation, and why Ruto is fighting to control Parliament. Rift initially, Azimio had 170 members of Parliament, and Kenya Kwanza 167. Now, besides the 6 House leaders led by Wetangula, the 28-member Committee on Appointments, which will vet Ruto's Cabinet Secretary nominees, include 22 other members nominated by the House Business Committee on the basis of proportional party membership in the House, taking into consideration the numerical strength of the parties and interests of the independent members. But in the supremacy battle, National Assembly Speaker Moses Wetangula, of course, is this afternoon expected to rule on which coalition between the President's Kenya Kwanza and Azimio is a majority side, as Ruto bids to control those very powerful committees that will decide the agenda of the House and will vet his Cabinet Secretary nominees. That's a full-page report there on pages 4 and 5. We will be touching on this issue much deeper, but just quick initial thoughts on why this is very important between Kenya Kwanza and Azimio, especially Kenya Kwanza, because they are the ruling administration, and why they want to have the majority in the National Assembly. I'll begin with you, Gloria.
Well, I think it's obvious, because we have, as Kenya Kwanza, we have a manifesto that we are trying to address that will need a lot of legislation. You know, we're talking about things like the Hustler Fund that has to be legislated. It has to be we need to find a legal framework under which it operates. We put together a women charter that also might require some piece of legislation. Remember, we promised free sanitary towels to, you know, all schools as a provision. So, I mean, to be able to have the numbers and the control in the National Assembly is what you want if you're going to push your agenda. And not only that, when you're looking at some of the promises, even within the agricultural sector, some of these issues will have to be debated in Parliament and legislation, either amendments or new laws created. So if you don't have the numbers, you'll end up stuck. Like you'd want to probably execute the Hustlers Fund, the 50 billion Hustlers Fund, but if you don't have a legal framework, if you don't have numbers in the National Assembly, they might just shoot it down every other time.
So very crucial for the President.
It's very crucial. Otherwise, a lot of the promises that were put out to the electorate might not be able to be executed because you simply do not have the legal framework.
Right.
Yeah.
Achieng, your thoughts?
As Gloria says, I think numbers are everything. And Azimio are equally pushing to be able to have to negotiate with the President, because if you have the majority, and pretty much government would have to negotiate with you for you to be able to push their agenda through. This is also what you wanted. Azimio also had their own manifesto, so there are things they would also be looking to do. So they'd want to be able to discuss with the government, so that if we pass this for you, then you would have to do this for us. So I think it is a question of how much of our manifesto are we able to implement, and how much of your manifesto are you able to implement. And particularly even in terms of who then is the leader of business, government business, you know. If it is Azimio, it makes it a bit tricky for the President. You know, this is not your own person. So how will you be negotiating? How will you discuss? How will your agenda then pass through the Assembly? Okay. So it's a critical one. And I think as we go into it, it will be interesting to even talk about the visit yesterday.
Okay, yeah, in fact, very interesting. Asaska, your thoughts on, you know, we've had this debate for quite some time. Who's the majority? We have the numbers on paper, but on ground, things are a little bit different there. Your thoughts?
Yeah, true, Zainab. Yeah, for the last couple of weeks, this has been a debate ongoing back and forth between Kenya Kwanza and Azimio coalition. And if we refer to Article 108 in our Constitution, it clearly stipulates how the leader of majority should be determined in National Assembly. You know, it's quite clear, it's straightforward. But remember, this year's election was quite close, so everybody's claiming majority in the House. And I think it needs, Speaker Wetangula will need a lot of wisdom in order to determine this issue this afternoon. It's not easy to be him right now.
Everybody says the Solomonic
Yes, he needs Solomonic wisdom, to be honest. So he's in a tight spot, and I think he's in a position to make a decision this afternoon. I have faith in Speaker Wetangula. And remember why this, as Nation put it, why this is a do or die affair, you know. It's a big deal because if you go back during Moi era, Kibaki era, then Uhuru's era, it's always been a tough war to fight for who is the majority, who will lead the National Assembly business, or who will be the majority in the House. So it's important because if you don't have the majority, then how will you implement your pledges and promises to Kenyans? You know, you're stuck, basically. And it can go either way. You can also be impeached. There's also that danger. Don't forget about that. So I think, yes, we agree. We all know that there are pre-election agreements and post-election agreements. There are people, once President Ruto was, election was upheld by the Supreme Court, who defected to Kenya Kwanza. What does that say? What do agreements say before? What do the agreements say, the post-election agreements say? What do they determine? And remember, as individuals, don't look at it as party or coalition of parties. As individuals, I believe that they have the right to make their own decision at an individual level. All right. And they have the right of and freedom of association.
Okay, and we'll get much deeper into that as well, like I said. Vivian Ta, you were not here, but I did introduce you. Karibu sana, very good morning. I would also like to get your thoughts on, you know, this issue of the majority in the National Assembly.
Actually, in my view, the ruling of which coalition of parties has majority in the House shouldn't really be a matter of the wisdom of the Honorable Speaker or lack of it thereof, because it's very clear in the Constitution, and we are a country that follows the rule of law. So it should be, you know, a simple matter. It should not be a difficult matter to adjudicate, because when we are talking about majority in the House, it's about, the Constitution is very clear. It's about the party or coalition of parties that has the most members in the House. And we know very well that Azimio is a coalition party, as provided for in the Political Parties Amendment Act, which is part of course, the law. So it's not just about a party, but a coalition. When the political parties...
Can you be a coalition and a coalition political
party
at the very same time?
When the Political Parties Act was amended and passed into law earlier this year, it made provision for a coalition party, so to speak. And because there's this provision, the coalition party allows for membership by other political parties and individuals, which is the case of Azimio. And it also allows for the coalition party to either field candidates as the party, or the constituent member parties can field candidates, which is what happened in the case of Azimio. Azimio only had the presidential candidate under the Azimio banner. The rest of the candidates in the other electoral areas were fielded under the constituent parties of the coalition. So this is very much in order, unless someone is not familiar with the Political Parties Act as amended earlier this year, and with the law. You know, we also have the political parties regulations. So it's not just about the act, it's also about the regulations, the political party regulations, which people should look into. So in determining who has the majority in the House, we know very well Azimio coalition has 26 parties to date. And the agreement of the coalition provides for, you know, how to exit or join. So if anybody, individual or party, wants to exit or join, there are provisions that are tabled at the ORPP, the Register of Political Parties. So I'm not seeing what gray areas.
I think we've had this debate for quite some time, especially when it comes to that, you know, the Constitution itself. So I feel like there's a bit of a legal conundrum here.
You know what it is? She actually explained it very well. Right. That it's clear in the Constitution. The majority either has to be able to have a coalition that has most elected members, or a party that has most elected members. Now, Azimio is a coalition party with no elected members, zero. In fact, it's not even a parliamentary party, because if you have no elected members, you're not represented in the House, in the Senate, or in the National Assembly. But as a coalition, Azimio does not exist. It existed as a coalition prior, and then they went and registered it as a coalition party. Now, you can't have a coalition in the same name as a coalition party. You can't be both.
The political parties
so the political parties act, what they did not think through, and this is now why, you know, remember when they passed it, it was done very hastily. They didn't really think through of the details. When you're talking about having a coalition party in itself, you're saying that all these parties must come together, sign an agreement, and form a party, an institution. And then now you're supposed to field candidates and that part. Everybody knows that there was only one candidate for the Azimio Coalition Party, and that was Raila. So when you look at it that way, then in the Senate, the Azimio Party has no members that are elected, and in the National Assembly, it has no members, so it can't even be a minority. Okay. So at the end of the day, the coalition that existed, if they had not registered it as a coalition party, then we would be talking about the coalition of Azimio has a majority of this. But as at now, I
know Vivian, you want to respond to that. So let's do this. Yes. So let's do, because this is suddenly our conversation, our focus of conversation. So just hold on to that. We'll be coming to that in just a moment. Let's just move forward to taking a quick look at still what's in the dailies. Very interesting report here on the second page. Still on the front page, though, on page 20, the butcher from Ravine trial starts in the US of Kenyan nurse accused of murders. Quite a big story in the US, by the way. So I found this quite interesting, by the way. So attractive students' grades drop when teaching is done virtually, study says. So this is what this particular research is saying, that researchers studying the effect of looks on academic outcomes have found that when instruction is delivered in person, good-looking students tend to receive higher grades than what he calls an attractive one. So I don't know what standard we're using in terms of measuring who is pretty and who is not attractive. So this is especially so in non-quantitative subjects. I don't know. It's interesting. I mean, I don't know if any of you have anything to say about this, but it is actually a report that has been published. It's quite bothersome. It should be, right, Asaska?
Yes, unfortunately, yeah, it's quite bothersome because, I mean, from the title, attractive students' grades drop when teaching is done virtually, study says. I mean, it's just out of this world. Right?
The ones who aren't attractive are really celebrating at
but
this
how,
point.
but the question is, how do you measure? What's the standard to measure who's attractive and who's not attractive?
But actually, there are basic standards. For example, people who are light-skinned are considered attractive.
Oh, man.
People who wear makeup are considered attractive. People with nice hair are considered attractive. And I think it's just that. Really, we have standards and we know.
Okay.
Usually,
let's move forward. Let's move forward. Let's move forward. So this is another story we will be focusing on as well. So Museveni apologizes to Kenya for son's outburst. Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni finally apologizing over recent remarks made by his son Muhoozi Kainerugaba, a top military official, after he threatened to invade Kenya and overrun the capital, Nairobi, within 2 weeks. Now, according to the president, Museveni, the remarks by the general conveyed in a series of tweets over 2 days starting on Monday were inappropriate because they interfered with the internal affairs of Kenya. However, the Ugandan leader also defended the promotion of Kainerugaba to a full general, arguing that there are a number of positive contributions he has made in the country. Now, the general's utterances sparked quite an uproar and forced the two countries to share, that share a border in quite an awkward diplomatic tiff. And reports indicate that diplomats from both countries were held up in a closed-door meeting in a bid to resolve the issue. I mean, Achieng, when you're looking at this report, you have, a very senior, official within the Uganda military forces, and making such statements on social media suddenly created quite a buzz. I thought, myself personally, I thought his account was hacked, and I thought, okay, this is suddenly not a general, tweeting all these things. What do you think of that? Do you think there's going to be any issue in terms of the relationship between Kenya and Uganda?
I think as Kenya, we need to actually look at it, look at what exactly the message he was trying to convey. I don't think militarily there's anything to it, but there's a political message he might have been sending. That's one. But two, also, when I saw the promotion, I thought he must have been looking for this promotion and it wasn't coming. And it seemed like it was a child crying for attention, and he did the worst possible so that...
But so reward for doing...
because so then he gets what he wants. You know, a spoiled kid syndrome. So you do the worst possible thing you can do, and then you are given to shut you up, because otherwise he was going to continue. He did not apologize, remember. It is his father who went on to apologize. At this point, I don't think he apologized as president. I think he apologized as a father whose son has behaved badly. And so to save face, again, because of the relationships we have. But you see, now we are reading so much into it.
Are we?
As Kenyans, you know, because it doesn't just happen. This is the president's son. It's not just an ordinary Aching sending these messages.
And he goes and not just the president's son. I mean, he's the top military official.
You know, he's a general. And he knows quite a bit about the country because we've had a close relationship with him as a country before. So when I saw the apology from the father, I excused him because I imagined it was a home affair that had spilled out into a national level, international level. But really, I think we would be foolish not to look at the undertones, at what exactly got him to this point. He might just be communicating something. These things don't just happen.
All right.
Yeah.
Gloria?
I think when you're born in State House, you tend to forget that it's not your home. That's the problem. Children who are born in State House just forget. And I mean, honestly, if this was a child of a president who, let's imagine a hustler, there are some utterances that you wouldn't even have the guts to do that, because you know where you've come from, because you know the implications of the same. But so it's very unfortunate. And then the other thing is that we are really we are legitimizing his position in society, because I think he shouldn't be taken seriously. And I think if we ignored him on all those platforms as just another spoiled child, then we wouldn't be told. It wouldn't hit the media. It would not be a headline, because you know, not every other spoiled child who goes and lashes out on social media, we speak about it. So sometimes we also give importance to very irrelevant
But is it irrelevant, looking at the position that he holds in the military?
He holds that. Does he hold that position out of merit?
Well, that is certainly not for us to answer.
So, no, it's the question. You know, also, we know, and within our societies also, honestly, I think we also legitimize a lot of things. If someone is fighting with their father and they're having a public display of whatever it is that they have, who are we to come in and start saying, oh, you know, this guy, we should have just ignored him? And
if he touched on Ugandan matters, but saying, look, such tweets caused quite a jitter, you know, fine, even if there was nothing militarily to it, but looking at, you know, statements saying, we will come and take Nairobi, you know.
How many times, okay, maybe that's not
a
that's not a good question to pose. I was going to ask if we are going to, that's not a good question, but I'd just say, for me, first of all, some people shouldn't be taken seriously. Okay. That's my understanding of it, is that we are actually legitimizing, we are building someone's brand who should actually not even, no attention should be paid to this person.
All right.
But the worst thing is that we've made it a diplomatic affair. We are now going to visit.
It's actually a very serious matter when you have diplomats from both countries sitting for hours on end to solve this issue.
So let me ask you, I'm just thinking out of the box. So when they go and meet, because this guy tweeted something, and do you imagine the scenario that they're sitting at the table and they're like, yes, you know, one of your military guys said that they're going to take over.
Okay, look at it this other way. Look at no. Look at it this other way.
When you really think
when you have President Museveni making a personal phone call to President Ruto saying, look, apologize.
You also have to remember that these people are friends. These people are friends.
And they're presidents.
Outside of the positions that they hold, they are friends. It was the same thing when remember when we were having the discussion of the handshake, I kept on saying, those people who are shaking hands as the head of state or who, so they're also friends. You know, again, the context around which we look at these things, we forget that, you know, for us, we're looking at the son of a president and who happens to hold a military position.
Right.
You know, who happens to hold a military position. But when you think about it, Twitter is also a platform for social conversations. So when I looked at it, I was like, you know, that's a very stupid social conversation. But again, we have freedom of speech. So it is us who legitimized and made it such a big deal that now we're talking about diplomacy wars and who needs to calm which country down. But it really, we are giving it too much importance.
All right.
Yeah.
Asaska, Vivian, allow me to just take a quick break. We will be back. When we come back, I want to get your views on the same issue as well. So a quick break here on M Live. The hashtag to use is MLiveNTV. Talk to us. We'll be back.
Okay.
All right, thank you for staying with us. You're watching M Live on NTV this morning. We're having a number of discussions and we're looking at the dailies. We'll just take a quick run through as well on what's in the other dailies. We're still on the Daily Nation, and I did have Asaska and Vivian. I just want to get very quick comments on this particular issue. Museveni apologizing to Kenya for San's outbursts on social media. Is it worth our time?
First of all, I think
Vivian.
General Kainerugaba should be very grateful to his father. He's lucky he has a wise father who has the wisdom to apologize for, you know, and clean up his mess. When I initially saw the tweets, I actually thought he was either mental, like he's lost his mind, or he has a personality disorder. I don't think such tweets, even if just made in jest, are fitting of a military general of his rank. And just to add on to that, I think, first of all, there's no contest between the Kenya army and the Ugandan army. Statistically, the Kenyan army is the best in East and Central Africa. Uganda cannot even take Busia, leave alone Nairobi, in 1 week. We would only need to release the battalion in Langata Barracks and maybe Kenya Air Force, not even the entire military, and would turn them to dust. So this,
but that obviously that's not kind of a conversation
I'm just saying.
Right.
So these comments of his are not fitting at all. Whether made as a joke or made in jest, it is not every day that a military general, you know, makes public tweets about taking over or attacking another sovereign nation that just happens to be your neighbor. I mean, Uganda should remember that Tanzanian soldiers with gumboots entered Uganda and sent Idi Amin scampering. So this is not something to be taken lightly. According to international law, actually it can be construed to be a declaration of war. It doesn't need to be anything. It doesn't need to be anything, you know, majestic. Just those tweets alone can be construed to be a declaration of war. But Uganda need to realize that the only people they actually provoked, if this was meant to provoke maybe the military in Kenya or, you know,
but this is just a statement from one person.
I know, but his rank and his affiliation and relationship to the president are a big deal. I do not think, in my opinion, that he tweeted those things without the blessing of his father. I think it's also irresponsible of him to keep quiet and let his father clean up his mess. For a man his age, even if not a military general, it is just wrong on all levels. All levels.
Let's hear from Saska.
Zainab, let's not forget that Kenya's foreign policy in relation to Uganda has always been advocating for peaceful ways of coexistence and non-interference. That's how we handle our diplomatic relationship between Uganda and Kenya. That's always what we've done. And of course, we've seen that there have been several allegations. You know, our relationship between Kenya and Uganda have been quite rocky if you look back history, from the time of Idi Amin and then President Museveni and up to date. And remember even last year, about I think May last year, when the then Deputy President Ruto could not even get clearance to travel to Uganda. That caused a diplomatic tiff between Kenya and Uganda, and it involved both the ambassadors and the ministers of foreign affairs for both countries. And luckily, at the end, that was solved. But I think the tweets by General Muhoozi caused a lot of outrage. and triggered a lot of Twitter conversation back and forth between the citizens of Kenya and Uganda. And I feel like definitely his tweets were uncalled for. They were not timely. It was wrong. And I think as a Kenyan, from where I sit, I feel like we should not take these threats just as rumors. I think we need to dig deep and find out what triggered this, what happened, and how can we solve this amicably.
All right. Let's move forward as well.
We wanted to secede like after the last election.
Well,
so he was extending
we'll leave that to those guys trying to solve this issue. So yeah, this is the full report here on the issue of the majority in the National Assembly. Poll losers seeking soft landing at Iala Regional Assembly. Members are seconded by political parties depending on their numbers in the House. Aspirants for the seats are frequenting Parliament buildings or begging MPs through phone calls to vote for them. We're seeing a number of faces here. Jeremiah Kioni, Asman Kamama, Fatma Gedi, Jalango Midiwo. Now, Jubilee Party Secretary General Jeremiah Kioni, the former Wajir Women Rep Fatma Gedi and Tiati MP former Asman Kamama are among the politicians angling to represent Kenya at the East African Legislative Assembly, and canvassing the SCATs has kicked off in earnest. The seats has kicked off in earnest with aspirants frequenting Parliament buildings or begging members of Parliament through phone calls to vote for them. The nation understands that Jalango Midiwo, the brother of former GEM MP Jakayo Midiwo, is also in the race. Wiper leader Kalonzo Musyoka's son Kennedy Musyoka is also interested. So this is also quite interesting to see how, if they will manage to get into Iala. I don't want us to get much deeper into that. But another issue here, so alarm raised over rising number of ARV defaulters. And this is a story there by Angela Okech. It is an issue on health. And let's protect ozone layer. Kenya urges African states. Kenya asks other African countries to fast-track the phasing out of harmful chemicals used in daily life that have detrimental effect on the environment. And finally, on the Daily Nation, Girishi withdraws of election case, hands Waiguru a lifeline. That's the former Kirinyaga woman rep Wangui Girishi, who's decided to withdraw a petition she had filed against Governor Anne Waiguru's election victory. Girishi telling a pre-trial conference at the High Court in Kerugoya that she did not wish to pursue the matter, and asking the court to give her 7 days to apply for the withdrawal of the case and serve the respondents through lawyer Brian Kaemba. Well, we want to know why this Governor Waiguru, however, welcomed the move, saying it would afford Kirinyaga residents more time for development. And Waiguru, who has since been elected the Council of Governors chairperson, garnered more votes than Girishi. And yeah, so that's, I don't know, Gloria, what do you think?
I think the shortlist for the permanent secretaries is about to come out. That's what I think.
All right, so there's a lot of
I think that's yeah,
shaping
because
up and angling and.
No, you have to be strategic. 5 years is a long time to be out of the scene.
Right.
Yeah. So I mean, how would I be begging the head of state or asking him that, listen, I am qualified, I can serve as a permanent secretary or as a CAS, but at the same time, I'm fighting one of your governors because I think ABCD. So I think, what I think is that the list is about to be out. Yeah,
so that's how you're saying.
And I think it's a good move. You know, in all fairness, you know, people forget that politics is a career. Politics is a career, and just like any other career, you'd be like, okay, so do I get a PhD so that I can get promoted in this? So do I come out of this? So as a career, you also have to be strategic. So are you going to keep fighting for the sake of fighting because you haven't gotten over the elections? We are done. The president has been sworn in. The government is being. So if you are a strategic politician who needs a lifeline, then you start organizing yourself and thinking, okay, how do I get to be part of this government that actually Girishi was part of? I think she jumped too soon. You know, when Waiguru came in, and it was all an issue of I think if she stuck around, actually, that they would have been subjected to party primaries. And that would have been so interesting to see.
Right.
But then Girishi, she jumped too soon and she panicked because, of course, Anne Waiguru at that time had a way of intimidating. You know, those days when the campaigns were there, you just need to show up in Karen and stand next to the
and take
to the DP at that time
picture
and be very constant in it, and then people will be like, hey, we are Meshapewa ticket. And I think Girishi fell into that and jumped too soon. And then, of course, that spurred a lot of other things and her utterances. So she's trying to make good, and she's a nice person, and quite frankly, she should be considered to be part of this government, because she founded, you know, in Kirinyaga, she pushed that movement. She started it in terms of the Hustler Nation, even before Anne Waiguru came on board. So I think this is a good strategy for her, but I would ask her to also publicly apologize for some of the utterances that she made towards the end that were a bit too negative towards the president and his family. I think she should also come out and just make a public apology, and then cross her fingers, because it's really strategy. Come out, you know, withdraw the whatever. If you are aiming to work in William Ruto's government, he's also working with the Council of Governors, and the chair happens to be Anne Waiguru. So definitely you cannot be in court trying to fight her. Yeah.
That's interesting. All right, Achieng, strategy, I think, right?
Yeah, I think so. As Gloria says, 5 years is a long time. And if you're going to, because I'm sure she will vie for governor again in 2027. So in between, how do you maintain relevance? Even in that Kirinyaga, how are you going to convince people that I can actually deliver this for you? You know, how do you come out stronger? And then we know politicians pretty much, and at the high level, do business. So how do you continue to stay in business, to continue generating resources to be able to afford a gubernatorial campaign in 2027? Otherwise, you will come in at a lower level, because it's going to be too expensive. And another, remember, that will be an open slot. Waiguru will have done her 2 terms. So there will probably be other stronger people. So she's trying to ensure she is the strongest Kirinyaga will have come 2027.
All right.
Yeah.
Asaska, Vivian, anything to say about this? I don't know.
I think my thoughts have more or less been touched on by Gloria and Achieng.
All right.
I also see it as a strategic move to just ensure that, you know, she gets a place in the next appointments that are upcoming. And you know, you can't do that when you're seen as part of the enemy. But kudos to her. She did really well. Maybe the only thing I don't agree with Gloria on is her jumping ship too soon. I think in politics, many times the writing is on the wall. Not everything has to be, you know, clear cut, you know, written. You wake up and smell the coffee. So I think what she did at that time was justified. But also even what she's doing now is commendable.
So it's always taking political risks.
Yes. Even what she's doing right now is necessary and commendable. It's not easy, you know, to backtrack sometimes and say, hey, maybe I made a wrong move here. And, you know, go back and find a way to remain relevant, to remain, you know, visible in the current dispensation. So I wish her well, and I hope she does, you know, her name is mentioned the next time we are hearing of appointments. The more women we have in these spaces, the better for all of us.
All right.
Yeah. Though loyalty pays, huh?
No.
Imagine a scenario that she just stayed loyal and stayed there, regardless of whether the writing was on. By the way, I was in that space. The writing was not on the wall. Like, nobody was getting a free pass just because you were closest to Ruto. The writing was not on the wall. But even if she stayed the course at that time, imagine she would not be fighting for any. It would have been a given that in the 50% cabinet that we had promised, for sure, because she had shelved her ambition, it would have been like a direct free pass. But you see, the issue was at that time that some of the people also did not believe that William Ruto was going to win. So they were pursuing the personal interest more than the loyalty of the cause, which was now ensuring that we have Ruto in government. So that was the thing. She wanted to make sure that in the event that William Ruto doesn't win, let me just at least try and be governor. But if she stayed the course and stayed loyal, for sure, it would have been she would have been in the first list of ministers. Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
Zainab, for me, I mean, a lot has been said by the rest of the panelists. To me, definitely, this is a strategic move when Girishi withdrew the election petition. Because I'm looking at it, yes, 5 years is a long time. Yes, she's looking at being the next governor in 2027. So definitely it will be nice if she aligns herself with the government of the day. And I think for me it's a very smart move. And I give it to her, you know, she didn't have to hang on when she was back in UDA. And she did bolt out. I give it to her. That was a bold move for a woman to do back then at the heat of that moment. And I think this is a good move for her. And I wish her all the best moving forward.
All right.
All right. It's also admirable how light she is. You know, she's able to move away very fast from when there's too much heat. She's able to move and move out, and when there's heat again, I think for a politician, I think that's something to admire. Really, you know, you quickly take stock. You understand. Okay, this is baggage. This is what I need to do, and be able to accept the consequences and move on quickly. I think for me that's admirable. So. And it's something I think women have been struggling with, because we're usually concerned with what will people say, oh, what will happen. But usually the male counterparts move on without a care. So I admire this in her, that she's able to just move on. Ni bakini mukisema. Me, I left it.
I need to look forward. Yes. All right, so okay, and we have to move forward as well. I think there's one report here. We will not get into it, but allow me to mention. So this should be on, okay, so technology is not on my side right now, but I'll try and get that. So there's this report here. Hopefully you can be able to get that report and read it, by Vincent Achuka. How Kenyan nurse in the US killed his victims. A man from Eldama Ravine targeted elderly women, killing and robbing them. In fact, his trial began on Monday for the third murder out of 22 he's accused of committing in a span of just 2 years. That's the face of that man. That is Billy Kipkorir Chemirmir. And of course, that trial is continuing in the US. He is said alleged to have killed 22 women. All right, moving forward, this is what we have on the front page of the Business Daily. CBK sued for billions after forcing sale of bank at 1 shilling. CBK accused of bullying Fidelity Bank owners to sell, and investors want 2.5 billion compensation for the forced sale. That's what's on the front page of the Business Daily. On the Taifa Leo, this is what we have. Magavana watafutia wachumba wao kazi. And ugatuzi, magavana wameanza mikakati ya kuwatafutia waume na wake zao menofu katika serikali ya kaunti kwa kuwateua, kushikilia nyadhifa tofauti na kuanzisha afisi zinazofadhiliwa na pesa za mlipa ushuru. This is habari kamili on the second page of the newspaper. I know you perhaps want to mention something. Right, correct. So this is on the second page. We're seeing the Meru governor there. All right, and this is the Kakamega governor, Fernandez Barasa. And so we know that at least for the governor in Meru, she has appointed her spouse to a certain position, of course giving him a position in the county. But you know, it's been a debate on whether is this allowed, because there was that argument that when governors come into play, you know, when they give their spouses positions, and you know, there's that title of First Lady, County First Lady. Why is it that so hard? Is it so hard for us to, you know, swallow the fact that as a female governor giving
Kwanza magavana ni wangapi wenye wanatafutia wachumba wao kazi? Like how many women governors do you have for you to have a title
such
about
a
you know magavana should have been like, you know, seriously, we have 47 governors, 40 of them are busy trying to get their spouses, but how many women governors do
this talks about both male and female governors,
and the picture of it, and the main story is the female.
No, it's not the female. Look, we okay. Yes, so according to Taifa Leo, what do we have? We have two governors. We do have the Meru governor, and we do have the Kakamega governor. In fact, here's the picture.
Zainab, when you think about it objectively, we have at the national level,
but looking at
we have the office of the president and, you know, the first lady, and it's generally acceptable for you know, the first lady's office to have a budget to run, you know, her projects and activities. Why then would it not be acceptable for, you know, the first gentleman at the county level to be accorded the same thing? Why is it such a big deal? Does it mean the day Kenya will have a female president, we will be in uproar when the first gentleman is given an office with a budget to run, you know, projects and activities? It's about time we got used to this thing that any gender can take charge of these offices.
But the essence of this report, I want to believe, is not basically on that. Well, you guys picked up on that, but at the end of it all, it is
on the front.
But Fernandez Baraza's picture was also there. All right. So, but the essence is really, is it acceptable to give, you know, your spouse as a governor a position within the county? And you know,
then the question should be. Let me pose the question. The question should be then: is it acceptable to have a first lady's office? If
At
the answer is
level,
yes, on any level,
yes.
If the answer is yes, because we know Alfred Mutua's first lady that time, Lillian, had an office, a budget, everything. Nobody complained. Why? Because she was pretty. Because she was pretty. So if it's acceptable to have a first lady's office, then
it's acceptable to have a first gentleman's office.
I don't know, right?
Right? Featured former people who are serving their second term.
But look, we have all these names. I mean, when it talks about Mkewe, Professor Janet Kasili Baraza ni mhariri katika chuo kikuu cha Masinde Muliro, na alipokuwa akishukuru wapiga kura kwa kumchagua mumewe, alisema anapenda sana kushughulikia masuala yanayo adhiri wanawake kando na kazi yake ya kufunza chuo. And you know, she gets the position within the
go back to
right?
the original point. If it's acceptable for the national first lady of the country to have an office with a budget funded by taxpayers, then it should be acceptable for the first lady or the first gentleman at the county executive level.
Maybe we need a bill. I think we need a bill. I think we need to legislate this.
All right.
Because maybe the gray area is that there is no legal framework. There's no legislation. I think we need to legislate that whoever is elected as governor, their spouse should have an office to perform so and so duties.
Okay.
And then once we do that, then you know it will cover also those who come in and say, I'm single, but my partner is ABCD.
You know, the solution did not start with the 2022 election.
Right.
What has been the practice in the past 2 terms? You know, we didn't just wake up. So for me, the issue was when I saw 2 new faces, and we are making it appear like it is the first time ever governors are appointing their spouses. Yet when you go to the offices, you will actually find a room, an office labeled nicely, office of the first lady. You will go to the parking and you'll find a nice parking office of the first lady. So what really is the issue? Plus support staff. You know,
and historically, by the way, when you look at people like Lillian Nganga, that she did justice to that office.
Yeah.
And actually, until she was brought to the spotlight, most people were like, sasa nani anataka kuwa first lady? But she made people now understood, yani kumbe you can have a first lady who can do ABCD, and no one had a problem. We even celebrated it.
And usually the thing is, it is
so the gentleman playing a guitar should just be allowed if he wants to do arts and cultural things at the county level. That's
I think was also appointed. Look, I think there's an argument that was that was fronted actually was the fact that he was appointed the chairman of, I think, the youth council within the county government. So
he was a patron,
not patron of the youth, the youth council in Meru. So and young people, I think there's a question.
But there's nothing wrong with someone who's not youth being patron. I mean, there are positions.
You know,
okay,
you
look,
have to be
too sensitive.
You can't mentor yourself. You need somebody who
people
has
should just let
hold your hand.
The first ladies and the first gentlemen should just be.
Let them really campaign.
They assisted their spouses.
And they understand. Nobody understands the governor.
I'm suspecting that Nini was written by a mistress.
No. Okay. Wow. Okay. Let's move forward. This is what is in the East African. Ebola rise in cases evokes COVID-19 fears. The EAC has offered to coordinate a uniform response across borders to avoid unnecessary restrictions on movement, and that's on full pages 4 and 5 of the East African. And just moving forward on the Standard, a quick look at what's on the front page of the Standard here. Azimio in a spin after Ruto's lunch meeting. Conflict. The opposition is reading mischief in President William Ruto's date with Speaker at Parliament on the eve of determining who takes a majority side. And still on the front page of the Standard, Museveni, I'm sorry for son's bad manners. I think we've spoken a little bit about that particular issue there. But pages 4 and 5 of the Standard, that's it. Azimio MPs reading mischief in Ruto, Wetangula date on the evening of the ruling. Maybe not date, but meeting. Marginalization, illegal posts and GM crops dominate Senate debate. You were there, Gloria. Maybe you'll tell us a little bit about that. So the matter of regional balance in President William Ruto's cabinet found its way to the floor of the Senate, with a member saying Mount Kenya had been allocated more than its rightful share. Nyamira Senator Okongo Umogeni faulting the president for failing to walk the unity talk in unveiling the cabinet, arguing that he saw little representation from the many marginalized ethnic communities in the country. And in his address to Parliament, President Ruto said the country had dislodged the history of politically mobilizing along ethnic lines, together with the culture and practices of ethnic exclusion. But Omogeni argues that despite the Kuria community supporting President Ruto since 2013 and electing the 2 UDM members of Parliament, none of its people had been picked to join cabinet. Gloria, maybe you want to comment on that, and then Asaska can tell us what she feels about the same, about the cabinet. I know we've looked at the composition of the cabinet nominees right at this point, but you know, when such talks you know, come from our leaders and saying, look, we don't feel the president actually looked at all this, you know, issues in terms of the regional balance in the composition of his cabinet.
Senator Omogeni was out of order completely. And in fact, one of the things that he tried to highlight that Nyamira did not have any representation in the cabinet. Now, if we are going to look at each and every county to be represented in the cabinet, then we need to legislate that we have, instead of 22, 47 cabinet ministerial positions, because the only part of the cabinet that has actually been mentioned are the ministers. So when he's referring to the cabinet not being balanced in terms of regional representation, then he's talking about the ministers. The PSs are not yet out, but he was out of order because we have 47 counties. How are you going to represent 47 counties in a 22-member ministerial cabinet? It is impossible. So when you look at the regions, for instance, and I think we were able to even respond to him yesterday in the House, that we have Ezekiel Machogu, who comes from Gusii region. Nyamira forms Gusii region. And if you're going to look at it in terms of even the wider region, Nyanza, then you can say we are well represented, because we have Ezekiel Machogu, who comes from Kisii County. We have Eli Dowalo, who comes from Luo Nyanza. I mean, so honestly, there was no argument there. And he even went further talking, and this is where we were even saying, so you're moving from the national platform, because he went further talking about, it was almost like on the level of clanism. So if we're going to have every clan represented at the cabinet, really we need a huge cabinet. And also remember, we have... When you're talking about regional representation, unless we did not have any mention of anyone from the Gusii region, then he could have said the Gusii region has totally been excluded. In which case, even region-wise, how many regions do we have? You know, we have more regions than we do the 22 slots. So there's a fine balance, and there's an issue. In fact, someone said in the Senate, I can't remember who, but they said even if it was looking about in terms of which region was represented in the last cabinet, so now we go to the next cabinet and look for the regions that are not, even that was considered, because the communities that he was appearing to fight for have actually had very good representation in different areas. So for me, I think that was not a conversation. But again, what I'm quickly learning as an intern at the Senate is that, because I'm an intern, you know, I was nominated to go and see how it works, and then now 2027 I try and get elected. So what I'm quickly learning in these houses is that if you want to get the spotlight, just be controversial, you know. Just pick something that you know will hit. And of course, I'm so surprised that Omogeni's comments are what are featured in the newspaper, because I sat there for 4 hours and we had really substantive information and people who contributed towards the president's speech, and none of that was featured because that's too serious and too, you know. But let's pick the controversial ones. Let's talk about clans and tribes.
No, but this is an issue that came up. It's not that, you know, anyone is making up this thing.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. So many other issues, so many other issues came up that actually would have contributed to a debate that would push for development. Like personally, I contributed in terms of the speech, in terms of the data protection and how digital economy should be pushed on ABC. But that's too boring.
No, it's not boring. In fact, it's a very good one, and I'm going to push for that conversation to be had. Yes, let's hear from
the on this issue of marginalization and maybe just the cabinet not meeting, you know, the face of Kenya threshold or expectation. I think the senator has a point. I don't think he's out of order. Constitutionally, according to Article 152, our cabinet includes the president, the deputy president, and cabinet ministers who should, no, 25, check Article 152. Okay. So it's not less than 14, not more than 22. So that means the total number of cabinet is 25 persons, so to speak. Out of the 25 persons, 8 positions went to Mount Kenya, 8. So that one I've included the deputy president and all the other nominees who are from the Mount Kenya region. Already, that just shows you there's an imbalance because that's a third. That's about maybe 25, 28% of the entire cabinet, one region. So as much as it's not possible to have a representation from each and every county, there should be a balance. You cannot give 8 seats out of 25 to one region and then another 5 to another region. Already that means more than half is occupied by only 2 regions. So when we say this cabinet does not reflect the face of Kenya and is not representative of Kenya, we have a point. Why? Because numbers don't lie.
Okay, let's hear from Saska.
Yes, I agree with you, definitely. And
so you feel that there's no regional balance when you're looking at that?
I'm sure it took a lot of work to get the balancing act in order. I'm sure it was not an easy job to be in Ruto's shoes back then when he appointed the nominees. But from where I come from in Marsabit, it's Upper Eastern, yeah. Even during Uhuru's administration, we did have a CS, Waziri Ukuri Yatani. This time round, we didn't. Even during Moi era, we did have the late Bonaya Godana. I'm sure most of us remember him. Yes, of course, even back home, we were a bit disgruntled because we really expected to have a CS from Upper Eastern, that's from Marsabit or Isiolo counties. We didn't get it. Well, yes, it was a different balancing act. Yes, it was not an easy job. Yes, the president and his friends and the leaders of the various political parties in KK did consult deep and wide. But I think he did a good job. I wouldn't want to put the blame completely on President Ruto. Yes, of course, we are disgruntled. Yes, we don't have enough positions. There are only 22, as you mentioned, based on the Constitution. I think there are other positions, the PSs, that are coming up. I'm positive that hopefully, I mean, I'm being selfish here, but hopefully he'll get to appoint at least 2 people from Upper Eastern.
All right. Let's just move forward. Oh wait. Oh, sorry, Acheng. I'm so sorry. So I know we're almost running out of time. I wanted to mention our report here, but yes, let's hear from you. Very important.
Yeah, I think the challenge for me is when you reward loyalty, this is how it goes. Okay. You cannot have everyone represented because you are not supported by everyone. When people went to an election, people took positions. And if then the key thing that we can all say about your appointments is that you are rewarding loyalty, then of course there are people who are going to feel left out, especially those who did not vote for you. I think that's maybe what we would need to get out of. I don't know how possible that is, because this is politics also. You have to reward those who work with you and those who do not make it to those who do not win the positions they vie for. So the challenge with this is just the fact that loyalty is what was rewarded. But I am also sad because in terms of minorities and all, we have had a lot of noise also how nominations went in the county assemblies, with people having rewarded their own people fetched from wherever they were drawn, and still the question of rewarding loyalty. Perhaps there is need to well, we make laws, but we don't follow them. So I don't know how best we can take care of everyone, because the critical thing with the presidency and the high level is that it's a symbol of national unity. We must all feel a part of it. We must all feel a part of it.
But even with rewarding loyalty, you could see that the president, perhaps in his nomination or appointments to the cabinet, by choosing the specific individuals, when you're looking at Aden Duale, when you're looking at Kipchumba Murkomen, these are people who share the same, sort of ideologies with which the president hopes to, lay the groundwork, from his manifesto. Then don't you think that perhaps saying, I need these people right behind me as we move forward, that these are the right people for this job?
It may be, but there's usually this saying about if you and I are seeing things the same way, why do we need two of us? I already have that perspective. You need another perspective to help inform the process better, because if we see it the same way, if we all see it, the analogy of W, and if you're on that side, it's a 3, and it's you need somebody who helps you understand the 3 side, somebody who helps you understand the W side and the M side. If we are all on this side of W, then we will rubbish the 3 and the M side, and lose all of those people. So sometimes it helps to just have people who help you see a different angle to it. Because remember also, you'll have a massive team. The entire government will help you with the implementation of your agenda. Right. It's not just the cabinet. So make it as inclusive as possible, so that this thing about it's our turn to eat, this thing about winner takes it all, we begin to demystify it. We begin to make people excited about voting, excited about participating in democracy as a whole. This is what causes this it's called, what's the word? That one.
This, yes,
but the role of opposition is to help us see the W in the M. That is the role of opposition. You can't want to come and be in government. Your opposition will keep the government in check. And you can't say that you've gone out, you've promised the electorate all these things that you want, then they vote for you because they're like me, I want to vote for the hustler president. All right. And then when you enter, you expect that you are going to now have a cabinet that constitutes of people who are opposing your vision. How then are you going to actually execute it? For instance, people are like, oh, we have very good technocrats. They happen to be in Azimio, but they took this country forward. They did not have the political vision for the president. How do they expect to serve in any capacity? What they are expected to do, and I'm glad that they've started doing it, especially when I see the comments of Senator Omogeni, they are expected to give those divergent views from the opposition. Okay. So we welcome that.
All right. Yeah. So, Asaska, very quick, we have to take a break.
Okay. Sorry, I just wanted to move away from the discussion